Hello everyone, it's Cheryl Millett here, live at 5 on I guess it's a Sunday, a long weekend. I'm hoping everybody's enjoying their weekend. There's always a lot of stuff that comes up from day to day and how people are feeling, but it's great to see more and more people out, even on my walks. So the Forest Hill Walk Club. We kept it small all this time, and the reason why I kind of kept it open and small with about 5 people up until I think last Sunday, about 10 people, just working with their comfort level, and that's more to do with mental health. And this is a key thing at any time when there's an event going on, actually, any trauma that might come into our lives, and that could be as simple as a death, change of job, obviously those kind of things. But this event is more global, which seems more surreal than anything, and more people are telling me that they're just kind of opening up more and more to say, hi Angel, and to say just how surreal this is, how this has been an event. It has been an event like no other. It's global, and things as far as lockdown, shutdown, all these words, and pandemic. And if you didn't already know this, the word pandemic and more the definition of pandemic within the WHO actually was defined more of millions of deaths that would be caused. That would be the definition of pandemic according to the WHO organization, World Health Organization, and they changed that, and they changed it so that it would be, I guess maybe the threat of, the possibility of, the potential of millions of people dying. Now, they did say millions of people would die. They did, and they kept changing, as they say, the narrative. And if anybody probably brilliantly kind of, I guess, kept clips of this and been paying attention because of other previous events like SARS and H1N1, where they've shown the majority of people did not have H1N1 because they did further testing and determined that, I can't remember, I know it was closer to 90% or higher than 90% of the people didn't actually have H1N1, but just the normal influenza. So it'll be interesting. The numbers don't come quickly. They will come eventually as to, and I actually printed this off in this case, a document, because yes, one could derive themselves uh, not mad, but just timing. You could take all of, you could constantly be tagging and documenting and printing and stuff. This would be an awesome book for somebody to do. The deaths and the percentage of total deaths, the 10 leading causes of death in the United States, and this is for 2016 and 2017, and it kind of gives a comparison. So you can see this is recent, as in just last year, and they're a couple of years behind. So the idea for me is to keep this couple of pages here. I think I actually downloaded the document, and when it comes time to look up cause of death, the same scenario. They should actually have it under the National Vital Statistics Report. They should actually have something similar, if not the same. It'd be great to compare apples with apples as opposed to apples with oranges, but because it's printed, it's going to be so much easier for me to see. And again, I'm happy to share this with people so you actually have it, and when the time comes, we'll compare, because some of the things that they're talking about is, will there'll be enough with the amount of money that people are getting with COVID. See, this is sometimes I'll hear different things, and I'll just kind of bring out the scenario. Many people are saying that numerous hospitals are dead. I mean, that would make sense because they're not taking in any cases of anything else, right? So no procedures, no surgeries, day surgeries, anything that's kind of non-COVID, that was not happening. So it makes complete sense that many of the hospitals were laying off nurses, laying off doctors, and that kind of thing. I mean, even here in Toronto, they were turning away people, but people could see that they weren't that busy. But that was the way it was going to be. So maybe there is more, more harm happening here than there is good, and we're kind of not paying attention to what matters most, which is looking after everybody, not just the people with COVID, but actually everybody. So if they come in and they have a heart attack, or if they have a heart attack, they should feel like they could come in and get checked out, we're not paying attention to the safety. So in here, I just wanted to bring out the list of 10. Just go over this quickly, and then I'm going to put it away. So all causes, this is the US, so anytime, we're going to look at kind of in the deaths in 2017 is I'm just going to round these up, 2.8 million. So in any one given year for these top 10, it's 2.8 million, or yeah, all causes 2.8 million. And then 2.7 deaths, all causes in 2016. And then we get into the top one, which is still diseases of heart, as they call it, malignant neoplasms, so that's probably a big word for cancer. Accidents, so that's the third leading cause. And then chronic lower respiratory diseases. Chronic means it's something that's been ongoing. So just remember that. The fourth one, chronic respiratory diseases. And then you have cerebral vascular diseases. That's kind of like the brain. And then you have Alzheimer's disease, diabetes mellitus, and you have influenza and pneumonia. So remember that one, influenza and pneumonia. And then you have nephritis, and this is to do with nerves. Okay, nephrotic syndrome and nephrosis, which is just inflammation of the nerves. And then you have intentional self-harm, so suicide. So of the top 10, you have 2 that are actually regarding the respiratory system. Now let's go in to see what they are. So 160,000 in the United States in 2017. And you add to that influenza and pneumonia, which they put together, 55,000. So over 200,000 deaths a year. And it's probably not much different for, not much difference for 2016 as well. Now there is another death that doesn't seem to be on here, cause of death, and it was notably the third leading cause according to some of these stats. Now this is a decade or so ago, and that was caused by medicine, surgery, let's say known causes from medical intervention, medicines, maybe they gave them the wrong meds, the mix-up of meds, whatever it is, surgery, complications, something like that. And that in itself is a very, very large number. I remember hearing it was 300,000 or something like that. It was a good number. So I don't know the exact number, and it's best to always look this up, but I remember them saying it was the third leading cause of death was actually caused by the medical system in itself. So kind of scary that way. But they don't, they don't have anything on there for that. Hi, Marie. So what I really wanted to do is just identify that I'm going to keep track of this over the years to come, which is the comparison from this year of the deaths to 2017 to 2016, and in the various areas. Now maybe they'll add COVID on there, I'm not sure, maybe they'll put that under respiratory, but we'll see how those top 10 leading causes change in there. So I wanted to mention that. The other thing I wanted to get into is I want to thank everybody for all the videos. There's a lot of good videos out there, and I think, at least for me, I'm just watching and seeing what's happening with what people are sharing. And it absolutely seems that they're bringing key people, scientists, researchers, I'm not going to say out of the woodwork, but somewhat out of the woodwork, out of their homes, but they're in their homes. And there's all these interviews, and they're sharing really good information. I have yet to watch a number from the last couple of days, but there's this Irish professor. I think she's more than a professor, really. Dolores Cahill from Ireland, Irish lady, and she's lots of experience about labs running a three, what did they call it? Class 3 lab, safety lab, and whereas in Wuhan it was a class 4. She also created a vaccine, meningitis B. And this is the very interesting thing, because I keep hearing that we have to have these adjuvants in these vaccines. But what I was hearing, if the virus or part of it, as in meningitis B was this particular one, then having that particular one that actually allowed the immune system or showed the immune response to it, I think they put it in mineral oil. Now, keep in mind that oils are very protective. Oils are very protective. You can't really grow anything in oils. It's like suffocating. Having my children having lice, you would use mineral oil on their head. It would suffocate the lice, and voila. So this is the thing about oils, very protective and wonderful. We need them. But the idea is, when she said, and I only watched a short period of it, mineral oil, I went, yeah, nothing can survive in mineral oil. Now, I'm not quite sure what the virus and the part of the virus, but I guess with mineral oil or nothing in it, she said. And that's what the big thing about the vaccines are. I'll just repeat this. It's worth repeating that when people are talking and speaking out about vaccines, the reason why they're speaking out about it is they may have had people personally, their own child, die or have these adverse side effects, life-changing in some cases, autism in some cases. And I can say that because I just recently read a whole case where they won, and it was I think his name is Dell, and it was a great paper to read, where the CDC was actually posting, this does not cause autism. Well, they don't have any proof that it doesn't cause autism. So they have to take it off. When that's going to happen, if they do, at the end of the day, people have to be advocating for doing this. But the courts did say that CDC wasn't in the right. They did not have the proof that it did not cause autism. And I'm not so sure about, other works that other people did, and all of a sudden, they were so real, and all of a sudden they're retracting it or finding holes. I think with a good legal team, you're going to find holes in a lot of ways. Or are you being threatened? Are the people being threatened? And that's why they have to retract it. That would make sense. Any one of us, if put in a position, we're going to do harm, that you're actually going to do something because it's your safety, it's your life, it's your family that's actually on the line. So the CDC has to take that off, apparently, according to all this good paperwork that the court deemed as, yeah, they shouldn't be saying that because they can't prove it. They don't have any proof. But back to the vaccine. So that was very interesting that the vaccine was, you didn't have to use any adjuvants, the mercury, the formaldehyde, these toxic substances. Absolutely. So the people who are speaking out about it and keep speaking loudly about it, you have to understand that people just don't jump, kick, and scream most of the time because they're going to make this stuff up, and especially large groups. So these people really just want safety. And if we can just take a deep breath and see it as that it's really safety for everyone. It's really safety for everyone. And that's the key thing. That's really what they're speaking out about vaccines. You can see the proof that they pay out millions of dollars, have paid out millions of dollars to cases that have been shown to be correlated, highly correlated. Now, they'll always say, prove it. How many times how easy is it to say prove it when something happens at 2 days, 3 days, and there is so many variables. Of course, it's a great question, or a great thing to kind of go, well, can you prove it? Well, most people aren't labs or research or able to pull that together in a very short period of time. They're probably more worried about the health of the child and what's going on, that's going to be their second nature is actually to go, this was caused by the vaccines. And what the doctors were saying to a number of people, which is why they were never uh, recorded, because we're responsible to record any adverse effects on any medication that we take. Okay, so we're responsible. Health Canada has a certain document. You are supposed to report it. Don't think the doctor's going to report it. But a number of people never reported it because the doctor said to them, no, 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 it's just a coincidence. It's not the vaccine. And that's, to me, that's irresponsible on the doctor's behalf to actually say it could not be from that. Really, we as people, observants or whatever, they give the vaccine, something happens. Could it be? Maybe not. And according to the compensation, they actually send out people to investigate and collect more information. And so, do that due diligence. Why not? So that's really key, to actually report any adverse side effects from any medicine, any flu shot. And I've been saying this to people who have said to me, they've got the flu shot. They've been getting the flu shot for several years, and they got this one flu shot, and they were sick for weeks. Never happened like that before, and they've never experienced that before, and they're usually healthy people. So I've said to them, did you report it? No, no, I didn't. I think in hindsight, I would always now say to people, it doesn't matter the timing. They're going to have on record when you have your flu shot and something like that, and more and more people just take out take down information. Let them give you the box, that the flu shot was in or something. You keep your medicine numbers, keep the boxes, and so that you can actually see and have something to reference. Whether there's what do they call it sometimes? I know with the natural supplements, it's the maybe they have a DIN number, drug identification number, something like that. I think that would be important. Just a little bit more information so that proper research into it can happen. The other thing, just to kind of wrap up that piece, is anytime you are taking any drugs, any medication, any herbals for that matter, is to actually do your research and see what side effects and any contraindications, those kind of things. Now, note that even though they say that, it doesn't mean it's going to happen to you as far as the side effect goes. I mean, I know that for other things, but it doesn't happen. It doesn't necessarily happen all the time, but it has happened. So there's a bit of understanding there. For some of you, you absolutely know, I've been reading this crazy book called Sapiens by, let's see if I can say his name, Yuval Noah Harari. There we go. And interesting, I'm almost at the end, but I wanted to read a little piece here because right out in the center of the Sapiens book, it's like a brief history of mankind is what the subtitle is. And it brings forth so many things. I'm not too concerned about the history of way back when, but the last few hundred years or 500 years, just the talk of all of that stuff and the introduction of capitalism and how I've talked about this, the upside and downside, slavery, how we're still slaves to this day, how the economics don't serve us when we think about all the debt that everybody's in. So upsides, downsides, sure, you have your independence. But at the end of the day, when I read this part here, you're going to see how it has actually worked against us in some ways. And then bring it to this event, and you can see, and we'll just bring this up and think about this, how some cases with family and things have come together. It's not a house anymore, it's a home. So I'm going to read this. I've been laughing through this book because of the let's put it in your face and let's think that there's going to be more good at it capitalism than that, when in essence he's kind of summarizing it up here in these few paragraphs, but I'm just going to read it to you very quick. It's a very long book. At the end of the day, you can read it. I'll just show you a little picture of it. And some people have said to me, "Oh yeah, I've heard about it. I really, really want to read it." Well, put your critical, thinking on there when you read it, as what I would say. So in here, what we're going to talk about here is, I'll start this. So they've been talking about dysfunction here. They've been talking about family and community, and this raises the possibility that the immense improvement in material conditions, our homes, our cars, our clothing, over the last 2 centuries, so the 20th century, 19th century, was offset. So this immense improvement was offset by the collapse of the family and the community. So much so that much of what's growing and growing, not just from the last 200 years, but it's been growing, is this idea of materialistic views, thinking about image. I'll go on. If so, the average person may well be no happier today and then in the 1800s. So even the freedom we value so highly may be working against us. And I'm going to argue that the freedoms, what freedom? So are we talking just the Western world here? And understand that various things at play during this event. Doesn't seem so much free when they just said stay home, and people just stay home. So it's kind of many things to think about when we read different words. So we can choose our spouses, we can choose our friends, we can choose our neighbors, but they can choose to leave us. With the individual wielding unprecedented power to decide her own path, or his own path, I'll say, in life, we find it even harder to make commitments. We thus live in an increasingly lonely world of unraveling communities and families. So it's interesting how he brings this to light. This isn't definitely the case for everyone, of course, but this definitely what keeps coming up in the words from clients and from other people is this word called loneliness. And at times we feel we have every right to make a change and to switch and to move away. I always think of that scenario of where is the grass really greener on the other side? But we have the choice. So we have all kinds of choices, but is that something that we understand? But the most important finding of all is that happiness does not really depend on an objective conditions of either wealth, health, or even community. Rather, it depends on the correlation between objective conditions and subjective expectations. Think of all of the expectations that have been put on us from ads, even just from research and science, doing the genome project, which I did a lot of research for my book, just even mentioning that, and people just thinking, wow, they're going to find the magic pill here. They're going to figure it out. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to change my diet. I don't have to change my lifestyle. We're going to live longer. We're going to live, everything's going to just come together because science is. What I'd rather say here to everybody is, well, don't count on that, okay? Don't count on science coming up with the answers for the longevity or never dying or anything like that. Now, the interesting thing in here, and I won't read it out, but where was that part here? I'll read this part. But the interesting thing about what they talked about here, because they did actually go into quite a lot of detail around, well, does health make you happy? Does wealth make you happy? Now, most of us can say, yeah, wealth wouldn't necessarily, working too hard, The family falls apart, you don't have the connection, the community, all of that. You're just working your butt off, which they say is the state of the nation for the capitalist kind of scenario. You put the suit on, you got all this, you don't work. Crazy piece that was written in here. But I'll also say that health, it may not make you happy as well, because there's a lot of people with good health. There's a lot of people that are doing a lot of healthy things, focusing on balance, and they're still unhappy. And that particular thing of expectations and too healthy minded, all of that stuff can come back to bite us. The idea is, I think I said this before, is we have conditions. We have conditions. I'll be healthy when. I'll be happy when. I'll think I'm rich when. And you can see how that goes. So they go in quite detail here. But this I thought was very interesting when they brought this up. A lot of truth to this. And I also want to say, just in a minute, I'm going to read this first. You might say that we didn't need a bunch of psychologists and their questionnaires to discover this. Prophets, poets, and philosophers realized thousands of years ago that being satisfied with what you already have is far more important than getting more of what you want. Still, it's nice when modern research, bolstered by lots of numbers and charts, reaches the same conclusions the ancients did. So here you go, right front and center in here. And we think about, my mind just jumps to natural, jumps to holistic. And there's a lot in here that existed over thousands of years ago. Remember, beyond that, history is anybody's guess. What do they say? The history is written by the victors or the winners or the whoever wants to write it. So the idea is, much of that we don't know, but for thousands of years, there is wisdom in that ages. So there's wisdom. There probably were a bit of not wisdom too, and there probably was, in line with kings and kingdoms and fiefdoms and unrest and peasants and imbalances and not equality, and all of that stuff wasn't in there. So I'm thinking, if we can understand what we have before us, we can take what we have with what we know, and understanding some of this stuff is here, right? It's right here in the book. But at the same time, this book, don't get me wrong, this book was leading you to believe that the new world order would be the better thing to move to. The new world, I'm waiting for it to say other things, but I've got still another about 30 pages to read here. But I feel, I understand, I think we can all justify that what we have today is a lot of unrest, no question about it. And as I explore more and more with people, and my own journey for several years now in the, I'll call it spiritual, metaphysical, egoic work, whatever we want to call it, is led me to believe that being at peace has not the conditions the same way as we have put so many expectations and conditions on love and happiness. And so peace is just feeling relaxed. Doesn't mean you have to go off in a cave for 5 or 10 years. It's just you feel at peace. And there's this acceptance and openness and compassion and kindness. And I would say that by you realizing, or maybe just me saying peace, doesn't mean you're going to have it. It means that is something I feel happens as we get to a place that we are comfortable accepting, not just accepting of ourselves, but accepting of others, not just loving ourselves, but loving others. It goes on like that. There's the self and the other selves, self and other selves. They have to go hand in hand. Otherwise, there's some balance there. So if we think about balance, there's balance between what you have for yourself and what you have for others. Self and others. That's balance as well. So a lot of things are balanced. But it's, and it goes in here to say, and I think this is important as well, is that it goes on to say, really, as much as you know this, as much as you're reading this information, as much as I'm telling you this information, you have to understand here that it's hard to think this way. It's hard to accept some of this thinking. And really, the problems around this is how deep in our psyche, how deep, how would I say, distractions, the way we've been brought up, the Hollywoodness of things, the image, the striving, the all of this thing just the discontentment, the distractions, all of that is so embedded deep into our psyche, as they say here, that anything is any guess that anything will change, basically. It's not a very positive thing he says in here, but the side of it is that, and there's so many things he doesn't say in here about, doesn't bring up so much the mind or the spirit, and really but so many distractions. He doesn't bring up all of them in here, but there's a lot of distractions here. And but he does go in a little bit about some of the things that we've taken on, and this was to do with, and this is be mindful for this event. Now I can take what they've said in here and expand upon it. Think about how many people are so fearful of viruses now. Think about how many people, for how long they've been fearful of germs. Even think about just the Black Plague alone, and how it's been ingrained in us that there was something going around. There was something going around. There was something going around. But what we need, what I would like to interject here is that bacteria, germs, viruses are part of our environment, are part of our living natural environment. And when things aren't healthy, unhealthy, like the terrain isn't healthy, our inner terrain, or the terrain in the case of the Black Plague, they were throwing shit and urine every morning out in the bucketfuls in a very small in an area where it's very condensed with a lot of people. They didn't know any better. We'll just keep it that way. They didn't know any better. So in that case, the cities that were trying to bring people in the cities, and it's kind of fun. You see more people, you have the shops, you have all these things. You can see how for commerce and stuff, you don't want to be traveling 10 kilometers and more work, more jobs. You can see how the capitalistic scenario would work into creating more of an urban environment. But in the early days, they didn't really have the understanding of germs, bacteria, and viruses. But I think even that, and still up to today, we blame things. We're going to get a cold. No, I believe you cause a cold, which is why some people will not get a cold and other people will get a cold. So you are ripe for a cold to happen, if that makes any sense. You are ripe for a cold. That's why some people, if they're busy, they don't have time to get sick. They're so busy. And then when they're finished with their busyness, boom, something takes them out. And I'm going to share why exactly that is here. But when in here and they talk about how medieval peasants went without washing for months on end and hardly ever changed their clothes. Now the peasants in those days, when we're thinking about, they're more out in the countryside, right? We're not talking about the urban now. They actually had an easier time with diseases. They had an easier time with giving birth. Why? Because they're a natural environment and they were moving, and this community driven, village like. And there were, I remember reading this about royalty. The royalty were having a hard time giving birth. They're just sitting around, putting their makeup on, organizing, giving orders. So they were told to actually follow the maids around, so that they could keep moving, and that would help in their giving birth. It wouldn't be such a hard birth. So that was one awareness that they had that's been written. And another awareness was Dr. Semmelweis, where he, in those days, if you had money or certain of elk or whatever, you went into a hospital to give birth where the doctors were and they give there. But not, let's say, not the peasants, the villagers. They had the midwives and they had the people, and it was just like today, if you're very comfortable with tinkering with toys, you're very comfortable about figuring things out, and you know a certain amount, you would you probably have more people being able to deliver babies than what you think, you'd be comfortable with it. But in Dr. Simoes, what it was is that people going from autopsy room to delivering babies, doctors, and so they had the corpse blood on their hands. Maybe they wiped it off, but not washed it off, and they went and delivered. And when they delivered the babies, they would be giving the bacteria up through the canal, and the mothers would get sepsis and they died. That's why there were so many movies where the mother died in childbirth, the mother died in childbirth. That happened for about 50 years, from the time they had the hospitals and Semmelweis was actually saying to them, look, if you wash your hands, all will be good. My rate of death dropped, I don't know, it was like in the 90s, significant amount of deaths of women. But they wouldn't have it because they didn't know the germs existed. They did not know the germs existed. But I'm going to interject something right here to think about in this case scenario, is that now we're talking about bacteria that's required to decompose a dead body. Okay? Now, also, you don't want any bacteria of that nature getting up into any of our bodies. Even the earlier vaccines where they used to do a cut on the arm and they would put in the viruses and the bacteria, which may have some decomposed or contamination, and people got sepsis and they died. So I'd like you to understand that the bacteria and certain things that are required to decompose it's nature, is different than maybe the gut flora bacteria that's going to help break down. And why viruses might be present at cancer, again, is helping the body survive, and they're just present, and they're, like exosomes in this virus, as part of the immune system, and they look like viruses. So I'm not really clear on here whether or not this actual virus exosomes, and maybe we're not seeing the bigger picture here, which is they exist in nature and that's not the cause. The reason why is in here, when you think of it, are chimpanzees' cousins seldom wash and never change their clothes. So you have examples in nature that they don't do that. My dog maybe gets 2 baths a year, to tell you the truth, 2 baths a year. I might rinse him off with the, to get the mud off or whatever from coming in, because he's inside. If he was outside, he'd clean himself. But since he's inside, I'll rinse him off and that kind of stuff. So toxins. We got to come back to toxins more and more with this. Now let's see what my cousin Pauline. Inflammation does a great deal of damage and creates ground for thrombus formation. However, the main problem is not a virus, but the immune hyperreaction. Yes, the immune system get hyperreaction and it destroys the cells where the virus is installed. In fact, patients with rheumatoid arthritis, let me just see, oh, there's more here, have never needed to be admitted to the ICU because they are on corticosteroid therapy. The lung is the most affected because it is the most inflamed, but there is also a heart attack, stroke, and many other thromboembolic diseases. In fact, the protocols left antiviral therapies useless and focused on anti-inflammatory and anti-clotting therapies. These therapies should be done immediately, even at home, in which the treatment of patient respond very well, probably that way. I'm just going to say a little bit about the inflammation part here, because I think that's going to tie this together with the toxins, and I've spoken about this at many lectures, and it is one of the key things within the book. I kind of, after several years of that, did further research so that I could have some more meat to it and research to it, is that inflammation is, I'm going to do the 7 stages of disease. Okay, so I'm going to talk about it. Let me put the book away here. The idea around inflammation is that inflammation is at the, I'm going to say, the root cause of disease. It's not at the root cause of disease. If you are looking at disease, you're going to see inflammation there every time. Inflammation, inflammatory, itis, arthritis, the colitis, colonitis, esophagitis, just keep going, cancer, diabetes, mellitus. So all of the conditions that we have, diseases, if we want to call them that, are chronic inflammation. I say chronic because it's good to distinguish between chronic inflammation and acute inflammation. Acute inflammation is you injuring yourself or getting an infection, and the body works through it and it's gone. Okay, that's acute inflammation. Chronic inflammation is where it doesn't go away. It's staying around, it's sticking around, and it's there. And this is the whole thing about pain, anti-inflammatories, but it's not getting to the root cause. Now, I've heard many times from practitioners, medical, other people, inflammation, the root cause of disease. No, it's not the root cause of disease. So the idea is inflammation is like right in the middle. If I'm saying the number 7, it's right in the middle. The pre stages to inflammation is, there's 3 distinct stages that are before. And one of them is enervation, the other one is toxicity, and then the third one is irritation, and then you get to inflammation. So irritation, injury, infection causes inflammation. Now the stages to chronic disease would very much, infections, maybe infections don't go away, but that ain't a good thing, right? So we have our body responding, and the response to what's going on in the body, the irritation, the injury, the infection, is inflammation. And the inflammation is the symptoms, the headaches, the pain. So all of the various symptoms, if you go and look at them, there's going to be inflammation, heat, redness, swelling. Now, sometimes you don't get to see that, and sometimes you just get to see the markers of inflammation, which is now, in many of the researchers, you look at depression, inflammation in the brain, right? Cardiovascular diseases, inflammation in the arteries, inflammation, swelling, redness, heat is there. And the body's doing the best that it can with what it has. End of story. It's trying to communicate to us. Inflammation and any of the symptoms we have is really a solid way to communicate to you. But there are some things you need to understand. When the viruses or germs or bacteria get the better of us, it's not that they're getting the better of us. It's that we are allowing them to get the better of us. Does that make sense? We are allowing them through our diet, through our thoughts, our thinking, our lifestyle habits, what we eat, our sleeping habits, whatever it is. That's all the puzzle of anyone's health. So the enervation is an interesting one, because the enervation one, just due to all my reading and research and going back to 100 years ago, and finding these things, is the enervation is really you coming into a dis-ease with your optimum health and having less energy. So enervation, the system, your body has been enervated. The reason why toxicity comes into play, because when the body is enervated, and of course now we have the environment, we have toxins in our air, toxins in our clothes, toxins in our car, new cars, toxins in our food, air, water, makeup, we go on and on, in our vaccines, in our medications. So really the toxicity comes as part of that. That is, when you're enervated, you don't have the energy to get rid of the toxins the same way. Now, there's a lot more detail I could fill in there, but I'm going to be mindful of the time here. So you get toxic buildup, and so therefore you don't have the terrain. It's no different than the throwing out of the fecal matter and the urine out the window in Edinburgh back when, before the Black Plague came, or in England, or wherever, all these places that the Black Plague was and spread to. You had to have that unhealthy environment in order for that to happen. And so if something like the COVID is getting the better of people, I don't even have to make this up. You understand that it is the immune compromised people, but not just immune compromised. But that sounds like a good way to educate people on immune compromise. And why are we immune compromised? From alcoholics to, again, alcohol is a toxin. And so you've got all of these various diabetes, obesity, and now they fit into the immune compromised. But I could have added some to the list. If you've had a organ transplant, if you're going through chemotherapy, if you have, just go on and on. But the idea is that the body is, if it's in one of those stages, you're already not, and so you're already not, how can I say, you're not firing on all cylinders. The system isn't. So immune compromised are going to be of different varying degrees at the end of the day. And what is the COVID or the coronavirus or the family of coronaviruses affect every year? They call it flu season. They don't call it cold season, and you can get a summer cold for that matter. So the idea is they do affect the immune compromised, but they affect for other reasons as well. And the idea is that in this event, all of the fear that kind of happened throughout this, I don't know how they can't figure it out. They don't have to use those same words. Oh, a lot of fear, and it's still hanging out there. So that fear would stress out, would enervate the system. No question about it. And when we think about even the immune compromised people, and we tend to go to the elderly, of course. I mean, I remember seeing one of my clients, 19 medications. Do they have any research that shows it's going to help that person 70? Never mind 19, how they interact with each other. No, they don't. So that's a toxicity in that person's body for sure. So you have all this additional toxicity coming into the elderly, and they don't have the mobility in some cases. They are immune compromised. Diet is. I'm sure it's not the greatest on this planet because they've got to work with what they have. The idea is that can happen at any age. Immune compromised, if you just have to look at the children today on antidepressant meds, ADHD meds, psych meds, allergies, that's also immune compromised right there if you have allergies. And that can happen as early as, well, I mean, one of my earlier on, not became a client, but they were at the job where I was before I left. That's exactly what happened. They had this little one, less than a year, had immune compromised allergies. They thought asthma, and they were going to give her asthma meds, but she looked up the side effects, and so no way you're giving my 1-year-old asthma medication. Anyway, I came along, changed the diet, talked about a little bit of healthy lifestyle for this child just so that it would help for healing. I think the child was 2.5, 3, and the child was projectile vomiting every day. Just a mess. And so we straightened up everything within a week. And then it went down to one every few days, one every week. But that's an immune compromised system. And that's a 2-year-old. So any year, and then 1 was when it first started. As the parent, she was trying to figure it all out. Nobody could tell her anything. I come on board and it's like easy peasy. I know exactly what's happening. I just finished my degree and then the iridology. So it was so easy for me to tune into what it was and help her. But again, just understand when they say children are getting sick from COVID, that we have a lot of immune compromised children out there. a number of them, for the reasons I mentioned. So the idea here is that we need to understand. That's so important here, to understand what's going on. The key thing, I think, is preparation. Now, we're moving forward, and we have this summer, we have the heat coming in, we have the flattening of the curve. I mean, can you imagine if you actually heard the flu information every year, with the number of people that die from the flu every year? Yeah, this wouldn't seem like such a big deal then if they actually did the same thing with the flu and called it flu epidemic, I guess, pandemic. People die from it. More people have died from the flu in the year, but nonetheless, there's so many factors here. I don't want to get off track. We want to prepare. How do you prepare? How are you going to suggest for people to prepare? Because they do say, oh, you know, we have this next year coming. Of course we do. When it comes to viruses, it has shown that there's a couple of cycles here. This one cycle and another cycle, 2 years. I've heard this before. Other things have other cycles. They come every 7 years. Cycles. So if you think cycles, women's cycles every 21 days. So we've got our own internal cycles. Nature has their cycles. Insects have their cycles. And then you have now viruses have their cycles. So at some point, it probably goes a bit dormant, but it's alive enough. And then in order to get more herd immunity, you've got it coming back in a second year. And that's how it is. So in order to protect ourselves in some way, why not? Maybe less colds, less flus is always a good thing for everyone. So how do we prepare? Absolutely want to get outside and get into nature. Absolutely, you want to do that. No question. Vitamin D, vitamin D. And I've said this before. You can't be showering every day with a bunch of soap, lathering yourself up, especially the areas that you get sun on, and expect your body's going to make vitamin D. Vitamin D, sun rays, UVB, cholesterol under the skin or in the skin, and boom, it's got to have that process of about 48 hours to actually convert to raise your vitamin D, and you'll get a lot more out of the sun than you will in the supplements if you do it right, which means you have to have enough exposure. It could even be 10 minutes, but no sunscreen, no lotion that's, you know, protecting your skin. Maybe you want to put a little light stuff on if you feel your skin is dry, but at the end of the day, when you have a healthy system with the fat and you stop washing it with soap, then you're going to have, not the underarms and groin area, absolutely wash that. Rinse off if it feels good to rinse off because you've been sleeping and your skin is a detoxification organ. You want to rinse off, great, rinse off, but we've come so far for fearful of germs and stuff and dirty and all this crazy nonsense about dirt and stuff that we just wash way too much. So those are two things about vitamin D. You'll get enough sun to create and store vitamin D. Your body knows exactly what to do with it, which is better than popping enough supplements. But you got to allow the body the space to do it, which is clean skin. I mean, in the sense that it's, you know, it's natural skin. You don't have too much lotion on there. And if you have to put anything, you can put a little olive oil on it if you want, if it's so dry because of that. But if you use less soap, you're going to find it less dry. That's going to be the fun part. I remember giving clients more and more fats, and that's what they came up with. Even the seal oil for practitioners. In a sense, one practitioner's story was she took a shower and she's so dry, so itchy, tons of cream on. She was, I think, from Pakistan, and she was just so dry. But after about a month of putting in the omega-3, the vital, the essential fats, then the skin wasn't itchy, wasn't dry. So there's kind of, it's got to come from both angles, right? We can't stress out the skin with so much toxic lotions and soaps, even if it's the natural soap, doesn't matter. Cleaning our skin, cleaning our oils, our natural oils off of our skin. And then to have the oils go on the skin, to make the skin as pliable and not dry, is to have the oils and the essential fats and so come in through our diet, right, through our diet. So that's even more important because then it gets into our brain and helps our brain. It's anti-inflammatory. All of those things about healthy fat and the essentials will help with the skin. So we want vitamin D. Back to preparation here. That's going to be really important. Then you want fresh fruits and vegetables. And when I say fresh, not the cooked ones, because you're going to destroy the vitamins in the cooked fruit and vegetables. So over the course, as the season, next fruits, vegetables, when they come in season, you're going to be eating them and with skin on. If you can go, now these are more organic because we don't want to eat the toxins and do that. But the idea is to have the natural vitamins and minerals, and you only get that vitamins if you don't heat the fruits and vegetables. Once you heat them, you're destroying the vitamins, not the minerals, but you're destroying the vitamins. And the vitamins, especially the fat solubles, are there to actually help the minerals absorb into the body. So they all need each other, kind of thing. So that's important. Next to that, you want to get good sleep habits. Really good sleep habits. So sleeping habits are going to be different for everyone. Some people better at 10 and get up early. Some will be more comfortable at 11 and getting up at 7. Whatever it is, 7 hours here, 9 hours here, 8 hours here. You're going to play with it, but to be consistent. So now you've got the summer and you've got the early fall to actually get in a consistent sleeping pattern, because this is helpful for our body setting its clock, detoxifying, having that consistency. So sleeping habits are going to be very, very important. Other things that you can leave out of your diet, unless you just want to do one coffee a day, great. But things like caffeine and alcohol, all of these things dehydrate our body, and they're somewhat toxic, and they work the way they work. So the toxicity, minimizing that in the ways you can, no artificial stuff, less processed foods, those kind of things. But now I'm going to get into all kinds of things. But I think the three key things is sleep patterns, the vitamins, fresh food, and then the vitamin D. Next to that, I think you know about breathing for your better health, and I think you know about hydrating for your better health. Those things, absolutely. So we'll just stick with those 5 anyway for today, and I'll definitely talk more and more about things as we get into the stuff the summer. Some other things might pop in at these various lives, some other so you can build upon things as you incorporate more and more things into your life, but definitely keep it simple. But the body is such a beautiful, it's such a, how can I say, nature of things that I don't believe that science will ever figure it out. I truly believe that that is a pipe dream, and it's meant to be that way, because it's just meant to be that way. Too baffling, too complicated, too confusing, not working. That you just can't give a pill, you can't just cut this out, you just can't do that. The things that kind of cause cancer in our body it's not about cut out. It's not about cut out. I mean, you're not getting at the root cause. I can't stress that enough. That root cause is very, very good. And I can't stress enough as well that people learn more and more about the fasting, the cleansing, the detoxifying, the simple, gentle things that you can try. And certainly, I have to say this, in most cases people jump into that, but I think it's much better to get a decent diet first. Nutritional needs are met, because if you go into a system or if you go into a program and you don't know what you're going to do thereafter, it can be very harmful to your body. I've done things for 30 days, 40 days, the master cleanse, and what you do thereafter is so important. I think it took me 10, 15 days just to come off of it. And so that's very, 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 very important. And so for some, it's going to be that you need to do it even more gentle. and then that way you don't have some uncomfortable things about it. But the body does need time. It doesn't regenerate in a day, and it doesn't regenerate. The skin, I think, is like 3 months if you're very healthy and you give it what it needs. Digestive system, a couple of days, which is brilliant. So there's different, it takes different different time frames. Like they say, 7 years to turn over your whole body, but that's just certain parts of your whole body. In that 7 years, you've turned over multiple systems and areas and gut lining and stuff like that multiple times, which is really why we need this nutritional factor in our body, is because we are one big cell regeneration machine, and this requires ongoing nutrients. It's no different than maintenance for your car. Well, it is a big difference, but the house, those things, right? It's spring cleaning, fall cleaning, like all of these things that make a lot of sense. You can see the connection, the correlation there, which is a really, really good thing. So, in essence, we need to bring back the wisdom from the past, keep it simple, have no fear, and what will come clear is that our body is the most amazing. I don't want to call it a machine, but yeah, it's just our body is amazing, and nature knows how to do. It's built in there. It's almost like it's DNA or innate programs are there, and there is no technology that exists, human science that exists is going to figure it out. That's as simple as that. There's too many elements here that need to be considered with energy fields and the thinking and all of that. So the mind, that part. But anyway, I don't know if there's any other questions. I love comments and feedback. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, because there is just so much we can just continuously support and share with each other. So just be mindful. In this book, they say we've gotten away from family and community, but that's not to say that we can't bring it back. So that's our choice, is we can absolutely bring it back. How do we do that? Okay, that's for another conversation. This is kind of like a joint thing, people, right? When it comes to being healthier, when it comes to more people being healthier, when it comes to addressing all the alcoholics that we have, that's why they couldn't close down the LCBO, because of the health there. That's loneliness. I've got a thing I just posted up, and it has to do with never drink alone. That's what it is always drink socially, if you drink at all. Drink socially, and never drink alone, because I think there's something about drinking alone that just doesn't feel right to me. If we think about the pubs and the Irish and the pagans and stuff, they'd show up at the pub and they'd have that great community, and then they'd have their whatever beers and then go home, and they probably didn't drink at home. They probably, or they only drank when company came over. So it makes a lot of sense that, if you're going to drink, it's like the no snack movement. It's like, okay, don't drink alone movement, right? You want to drink socially if you're going to drink at all. Just probably one of those wise things that can help us get our head around that community is important, and that that loneliness may be happening more with this whole independent society that has been brought forward from due to capitalism and all of that stuff. So I'm going to leave you with that. I want to absolutely spend time with family, however that is. If you don't have any family here, then maybe, as you've been doing, pick up the phone or do some video and things like that. But for as we move forward and you're talking to people, it's thinking about family. It's thinking about family time. Yes, you time, of course, but there's family time and friend time, and that more and more. Think about that, and we'll see what kind of a world is going to come of it. And I'll still I will still make sure we all have in the somewhere and surrounding around us at this time that we maintain our freedoms no matter what. That's going to be priority. Even though you don't understand it at this time entirely, is that as things are going to be coming up, I'm going to tell you this right now, court cases, petitions perhaps, some protesting perhaps, that some of the things that's going to come out, and it's going to be around freedoms. And you might say, oh yes, Cheryl, but the guns harm people. But it's the people, it's not the guns. So the idea here, as we come together and we work together in more community, more family, less people isolated, all of that, this is going to be very, very important that we never lose sight that we want to maintain our freedoms. I can't say this enough. The government works for us. The police work for us. The people, everything that's kind of supports the rule, you think, the laws that are required, very grateful for them. The medical care, although they focus on the sick, but won't go down that rabbit hole. But the idea is they work for us. And I don't want us to lose sight of that as well, that the government, the politicians, they all work for the people. And that's what they have to protect, is the people. And they are supposed to care for the people. Even the medical, they're supposed to take the oath, the Hippocratic oath. And that is about do no harm. So you hear about all these things that are coming about. That's the medical education that came forth, not the earlier medical, not the wise, of the thousands of years ago, but the current medical paradigm is using drugs, using drugs. Let's get it working by using drugs, but that doesn't get to the root cause. They're working for the inflammation for sure. They're working to suppress or not have the symptoms come up, but that's not getting to the root cause. Absolutely. So on that note, enjoy the rest of the evening and the rest of the long weekend for those who are doing work. And we're just going to have to get into action as this more and more opens for community, and we're going to have to get into action supporting small businesses, get into action of using cash. I know you may say, but it's an inconvenient. No, use cash. Community, say hello, good morning. I've been saying that to everybody I see walking out there. So yes, community, family is part of the communities, all of that stuff. So I'll keep reminding everybody about that stuff, because that I think is very, very important going forward. And then the economy will just pick up, but maybe there'll be a different sense to the economy. We won't be so focused on getting into debt, and we won't be so focused on trading in the stock market. We won't be so. Anyway, enough about that. So take care, everyone. Thanks for coming on board. Any comments, questions that come up, please post them below. And I think at the end of the day, I think if you can follow on Facebook, right, and then you'll get the messages. But as I say, live at 5. 5 is 5 o'clock. If I'm going to come on in any one day, it's going to be at 5. And tomorrow's Monday's live at 5. We'll do that for sure. Just some consistency. And we're all together. We're all in this together, everybody. So let's support each other and support others in our lives. And just keep moving along. If something doesn't go okay, if it's not working right, let it go. Have patience for things to kind of turn over, move forward. Nobody likes to be told what to do. We're so independent now. Nobody likes to be told what to do, and which is why I'll leave you with this. I say to people, did you hear? Did you hear? Did you read? And then I'll come up with these various things that are happening in research, very positive things. And they're going, no, because this isn't the stuff that's in mainstream media. So when it comes to our freedoms, when it comes to supporting small businesses, did you hear? We've got to focus on, helping the small businesses out. This is going to be great for our economy. Like those kind of things you can interject after you ask the question. It kind of gives you permission to speak freely. And instead of just, verbal vomiting, as they say. Anyway, take care, everyone. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. And we'll see you again on here. I look forward to it. Bye for now, everyone.